It's time to hit the bunny trail with Seth and Mackenzie, that is. Tonight, the sibling duo are up against a long-eared terror, and maybe something a little more. So sit back, relax, and get ready for one action-packed episode of Confronting Evil. Eric and Jake were walking through a darkness so thick it was nearly impermeable. Both boys knew that they shouldn't have been there, that they had been warned to stay away, but neither listened. In fact, it was the primary reason behind their coming to the forest on this side of town, walking parallel to an old set of railroad tracks that led them toward a legendary overpass. Legendary to those that live in the small town of Clifton, anyway. They had heard the stories, a killer that appears at midnight, the strange disappearances of town residents, and the increased police presence in the area. Hell, a kid that Eric knew had even gone missing a few years back, and that kid's best friend had survived the ordeal and recounted his events, but was committed to a mental institution soon after, being severely traumatized by what he saw. But being teens with nothing much to do in the backwoods of rural nowhere, the boys were inclined to partake in a bit of what would be harmless mischief. The sounds of crunching leaves underfoot were the only sounds to be heard. It was April, and in this part of the country, most insects were still hibernating, avoiding the frigid bite of early spring's cold embrace. Creeping as silently as they could, off in the distance to their left, barely visible under a cloak of night, odd shapes of rigid structures were faintly visible, and the boys knew that they were close. Those were the remnants of a long-decayed, turned-over bus, having since been mostly reclaimed by the forest. But this odd piece of town history served as a landmark, indicating their continued closing proximity to the overpass ahead. They were almost there. Within minutes, the paved road was in view through the trees, intersecting with the railroad tracks and running through an underpass beneath them. This short tunnel was the point of speculation for many in town, and the two boys knew it well. Legend states that if you walk through this underpass at midnight, you will never make it to the other end. Creeping down the hill from the tracks, the boys reached the blacktop of the road and turned to face the tunnel before heading inside. Despite what each claimed, both were apprehensive and slow at conversation until about halfway through. Nothing happened, and the other end was in sight, causing them to both somewhat abandon their cautious disposition and begin joking and fooling around. That is, until the sound of something dragging across the ground behind them grabbed the attention of them both simultaneously. Each turned their head as slowly as the other, looking over their shoulder to see a sight that froze them in place and ran ice through their veins. Only at about 15 feet behind them stood a looming and lurking figure, lurching ever forward, dragging a large fireman's axe behind it, held heavy in one of its fur-covered hands. Beneath the splotches of red, a whitish fur covered its form from its huge feet all the way up to its large, pointed ears protruding from the top of its head like two antennae. Its eyes were bulbous, like insects, and as black as opals, sitting atop both a contrasting pink nose and two protruding buck teeth that stuck out from within a large and menacing frozen smile. The two boys were so in shock, each stood there for a moment as the figure drew closer. But soon, both had broken free from their paralysis and turned to run for the other exit from the tunnel at the opposite end, and their salvation. After only a few steps, Jake heard Eric stop running and begin calling for help. Stopping only for a moment, Jake turned to see that his friend had tripped and fallen. He would have attempted to rescue him, to save him from his grim fate. But it was too late. The thing was already upon him. Jake watched the monster raise the axe high above its head before swiftly and forcefully bringing it down onto the back of Eric's skull, cleaving clean through his brain and out through the front of his face, causing the tip of the axe to clink off the pavement as it brought Eric's head down with it. Jake knew that there was nothing he could do, and even though he could hear the wet thuds and clank of metal against the blacktop as the monster carved Eric up into bits, he still feared that it could be following him, and turned back only once. He knew how it would sound, and no matter what the truth really was, he was sure that no one would believe him. The following day was anything but a normal one for Jake. His parents had collected him from the local police station in the early hours of the morning, greeting him with threats and accusations until they heard that his friend Eric had gone missing. The officers asked questions, and Jake recounted all that happened. But just as with many times before in this small town, no one would believe him. Sure, his friend was indeed missing, and Jake was clearly shaken up. But no professional within the town limits believed in the local legends. Jake's father, despite his exhaustion, still managed to make it into work that morning. His mother, on the other hand, decided to stay home with her son. Whether his claims were true or not had no bearing on how he felt, and she knew that he could benefit from her presence and a few days off from school. So, when the doorbell rang, despite his proximity to the door itself, Jake's mother trekked the short ways from the nearby kitchen and to the foyer to see who was on the other side. Opening the door, she saw two uniformed individuals, though not in the uniforms of police officers.
Hello. I'm Ranger Curtis, and this is my partner, Ranger Strode. We're with the Department of Forestry, ma'am. We were wondering if we could speak to your son about what happened last night?
The female introduced herself, and the gentleman with her. She was short, but not much shorter than herself. Her hair was long and blonde, and she didn't seem to be much older than her early to maybe mid-20s. The gentleman next to her seemed to be about the same age, and although his hair was slightly darker and mostly covered by a cap, it was blonde as well, albeit a dirty blonde.
May I ask what for and who exactly you're with? We already spent hours last night at the police station answering multitudes of questions.
The woman inquired.
Well, ma'am, we work for the Department of Forestry, as she said, and we're following up on a report of an animal attack in the area. We thought your son's incident might be related. If there is something dangerous in those woods, we'd like to know what it is and find it before anyone else gets hurt.
The woman's partner, Ranger Strode, replied. Jake's mother thought about what they said for only a moment before inviting them in. She certainly didn't want anyone else getting hurt, and resigned herself to do what she could to help, even allowing the pair to speak with Jake alone, despite her hesitation. They told her that it may help him feel at ease regarding opening up about specific unknown details, and she could see their point. After she walked them into the living room nearby and introduced them to her son, Jake's mother went about brewing a pot of coffee for the three of them before returning to a bit of housework.
Hi, Jake. I'm Ranger Curtis. Can you tell me what happened last night?
the lady asked, cutting right to it. Jake started, and then paused with hesitation.
Listen, Jake. I know your parents and the police probably don't believe you. But I'm telling you, me and my partner here spend a lot of time in the woods, and have seen many things that no one would believe we've seen either.
Ranger Strode persisted. Jake opened his mouth once again, but remained silent for a few seconds, before finally mumbling out the words, like they had simply fallen from his mouth, unintentionally.
It was the bunny man.
The Rangers stopped and looked at one another, confused and bewildered.
What's a bunny man?
The bunny man is just something the other kids tell us to scare us. Or at least that's what I used to think.
So, it's a local ghost story.
Yeah, kind of. The way I always heard it was that a bus full of mental patients being transferred had crashed out by that old underpass on the edge of town. The paths the roads travel have changed a little over time, and this part I always knew was true, because in the woods about 50 feet from the road are what remains of a deteriorated and abandoned bus flipped onto its side.
And this bunny man's responsible?
No, he was one of the passengers. Legend has it that all of the inmates were rounded up by authorities, all of them except for one. People thought the man who had escaped had either died in the woods or had left town because, for a long time, things were supposedly pretty normal. That is, until the animal mutilations began.
Animal mutilations?
Yes, rabbits. Every morning for weeks, eviscerated and mutilated rabbit carcasses were strung up from that overpass and discovered by passing motorists. Police would take them down, but they would just reappear by the next morning. I was told that this kept happening until culminating with the deaths of a couple local teens that were out on that overpass bridge partying late one night. The following morning, they were found in the same manner as the rabbits, eviscerated and mutilated, hanging from that overpass. People say that there's a man lurking in those woods, out by that old bridge, dressed in a full bunny suit, wielding an axe, and ready to claim the lives of anyone who dares walk through that underpass, or stand atop that bridge late at night. Midnight, in fact. Most people don't believe it. Even I didn't. But every now and then, rabbits reappear hanging from the side of that overpass, beyond the mouth of the tunnel. Eric and I were just trying to have a little fun. I didn't think he would...
Jake tried to finish, but began to break down.
Is there anything else, Jake? The color of his eyes, or a voice? Did he speak?
No, his eyes were just black, like the eyes of a mask, and he didn't say anything. And this has happened before, not too long ago, to two other kids, I know. No one believed them, so I didn't think anyone would believe me either.
Jake finished, noticing that the Rangers, for some reason, seemed to believe his story.
Well, that is a lot to take in. You're saying that you and your friend were attacked by a 6-foot-tall, axe-wielding rabbit. Did he run? Or hop?
Ranger Curtis asked sarcastically, getting a nudge in the side from Strode's elbow.
What?
Is there anything else you can tell us? Anything at all?
Well, actually, yeah. When I was running and hit the road, I looked back once, thinking that he might be chasing me, but I saw him just standing at the edge of the tunnel. The one out on Colchester. He was just watching me, standing just inside the overpass.
Alright. Well, thank you, Jake, for your time. We'll see ourselves out.
Strode concluded, turning towards the door with his partner.
You sure you don't want coffee or anything?
Jake's mother interjected, returning just in time to see them opening the door to leave. The Rangers politely declined, thanked her for her time and cooperation, and left the house, walking towards a dark teal Torino Cobra parked out front.
So what are we thinking here, Seth? Ghost?
The ranger, known as Curtis, Mackenzie, asked her brother.
Honestly, I'm not sure. I mean, it seems like it, but ghosts typically don't carry weapons.
Seth responded.
Well, let's talk it over during lunch. I'm starving.
It's not even noon yet, Mackenzie. Don't you think about anything else but killing monsters and eating?
Well, yeah, actually, I think about...
Nope, never mind. I don't want to hear about it.
Seth stopped her, shaking his head and climbing into the passenger seat of the car.
Oh, you're just mad because you never get any,
Mackenzie said after climbing into the car before starting the engine and pulling out into the dull traffic of a lazy Virginia town. It was only 20 minutes until Mackenzie spotted what looked to her like a great place to eat, leaving Seth wondering how it was, no matter where they were, she always seemed to find the greasiest dives to dine at. The place seemed lively enough, but the staff was obviously well-trained and good at their jobs, coming over to take their orders before Mackenzie had even returned from the bathroom, washing up to eat.
Did she tell you what she wanted? Are you two ready to order, or do you need more time?
The waitress asked. Seth paused for a moment, but he knew his sister and was confident in placing the order himself.
Sure, we're ready. I'll have a Cobb salad with a cup of hot tea to drink. And my sister here will take one of your bacon blue cheeseburgers, extra bacon, and a side of fries, medium rare, and a cup of coffee.
Seth said with a smile, handing the menus back to the woman. The waitress turned and walked away just as Mackenzie re-emerged and sat down.
Does she already grab our order?
Mackenzie asked, and Seth nodded, before she asked him what his thoughts were about the case and what he thought that they were dealing with.
I mean, it certainly sounds like a ghost MO. The manifestations seem to be on point, but there's something different about it, you know? Like, why would a ghost use an axe? Unless there was one lying around.
Yeah, I know. It's not like the freaking thing should be able to manifest an axe. But if you ask me, it's a Casper, though. We should probably get out there before this rabbit's victims multiply.
Seth just stared unblinkingly and apathetically at his sister.
Get it? Rabbit? Multiply? 'Cause he's a... forget it, Mr. Roboto.
Mackenzie remarked, commenting on her brother's stony demeanor towards her humor.
Well, before we head out into the woods, Kins, don't you think we should learn more about what we're dealing with?
And what better way to learn about it than shooting it in the face with a barrel full of rock salt, or sticking this knife into its neck?
Mackenzie said, pulling the handle of the black-bladed knife from her inside pocket, just enough for Seth to see before the waitress approached, coffees in hand. Mackenzie stuck the knife back into her jacket.
Here's your coffee, and your food will be right out,
the waitress said, before turning to walk away once again. Once she was gone from earshot, Seth offered the contrary to Mackenzie and her argument.
You don't even know if any of that stuff will work.
Yeah? And who else may end up dead while we sit around and gather information like a couple of bookworms?
You know, just because I do my research on the things that we go up against doesn't make me a bookworm. It makes me prepared.
What? I'm prepared.
Mackenzie responded, tapping her jacket where the knife resided once more.
That's not preparation. That's throwing whatever shit you have at the wall and hoping something sticks.
Now there's an image to go with your meals. Should I bring them back in a few?
The waitress chimed in, catching Seth and Mackenzie off guard, holding their food in her hands. Seth released a small chuckle before responding with,
No, we're good. And thank you.
The woman set the plates of food in front of each of them, asking if there was anything else they needed, and after getting her response, left them to enjoy their meal.
Ew. Cobb salad? Again? Seems maybe you and this 6-foot rabbit have something in common,
Mackenzie said, eyeballing the plate of vegetables and leafy greens in front of Seth before telling him that he did not know how to enjoy the good things in life. She then smiled, picking up her burger, and took a large bite.
Yuck!
Mackenzie blurted out before spitting the partially chewed meat and bread back onto her plate.
What's wrong?
Seth asked, confused and concerned.
Blue cheese! Ew! This is why I don't let you order for me.
What do you mean? Only a few weeks back you ordered the same thing from one of those truck stops.
Well, yeah, once. Thought I'd give it a try, not live off the crap. Never been a fan of moldy cheese. I should have gone with my instincts.
But you ended up eating the whole thing!
Yeah? It's not the burger's fault I messed up. Can't let good red meat go to waste, Seth.
You're insane.
Maybe I am. But I'm not the one who wants to go sit somewhere and read while more innocent people end up getting killed.
What does that have to do with...
Seth began, but was cut off.
Just like with that red-eyed thing, the bell, and even Cameron Scott's brainchild that burst out of that kid's abdomen a couple weeks ago. Always so quick to hit the road. Can't do anything until we learn more. And in the meantime, real people are getting chewed up and spit out by monsters.
Whoa, Kins. I know you want to just run right at them, guns blazing. But that's not what keeps us alive.
No, Seth. That's what keeps other people alive.
Look, Mackenzie, I want to go after the thing as much as you do. I want revenge for what happened to Dad as well. But look at Mom. Sometimes there's loose ends you simply can't tie up, Mackenzie. Mom dealt with this shit for years, and she nearly drove herself mad with guilt. Hell, look how we were raised.
Don't you dare say a word about Mom. She did. You know what, Seth? We each have a different idea on how to proceed. There's a town library right around the corner. Why don't you head over there, see what you can find out?
Okay. So what are you gonna do?
I'm going to do the same thing. Only I'm going to look for clues. You know, where the crimes actually took place.
Mackenzie said, a bit begrudgingly. Seth thought about it for a moment. He knew this was a bad idea, that she was simply being rash, again. But she was stubborn, and he had had enough of her company to last him the next few 100 miles. He didn't know if it was against his better judgment to split or not, but at that moment, he fully believed that he was making the correct decision.
You know what? Sounds like a great idea. How are we gonna meet up later?
Just call me when you're done. That underpass is only a few miles from here. Take the car. I'll walk. I could use the solitude anyway.
Mackenzie said, dropping both money for their meal and the car keys onto the booth table, scraping the gobs of blue fungus off from her burger before snatching it up with vigor and walking out the door of the establishment. Seth couldn't believe she simply left him with the vehicle to use. However, he soon realized that she only did so because she wanted to get away from him so badly. This thought now reinforced Seth's decision to separate for a while. He stood to his feet, threw his jacket over his broad shoulders, and walked out the door, not long after Mackenzie, leaving his nearly uneaten meal beside the money Mackenzie had left. The waitress was happy with her $20 tip. The days had been growing longer as the weeks progressed, but in Clifton, darkness was still coming pretty early during this time of year, and with only a few hours, darkness had enveloped the woodland area. Despite the impositions that night brings, the warning of local legends, and the remnants of police tape, 2 youths had been waiting in the shadows since night had fallen, and now it was almost time. They walked closer and closer towards an ominous tunnel underpass surrounded by decades of myth.
I don't know, Clancy. I don't think we should be here right now. I got a bad feeling about this,
the blonde-haired teenager said to his accomplice.
Will you stop being such a baby? Jake's a liar. Eric probably ran away from home or something. You heard the police, Robbie. They didn't even find a body or evidence of foul play. I'm telling you, everyone's making a big deal over nothing.
Clancy responded.
Yeah, but...
No buts. Can we just get this over with, please? I didn't sneak out tonight just to have to deal with you chickening out.
Yeah, sure. And I'm not chicken.
Robbie proclaimed. The two boys stared ahead at the tunnel before them, its yawning maw beckoning like a predator luring its prey, the darkness within, resolute and unwilling to reveal its secrets. Robbie was terrified, but after his friend had so graciously pointed out his cowardice, he felt obligated to go first. Clancy wouldn't let on, but he was scared as well, and followed closely to Robbie, albeit behind him. Within a few moments, both boys had stepped beyond the threshold, the concrete walls of the tunnel, encasing them from the world outside, their only exits directly behind them and quite some distance before them. The goal was to walk to the other side, just as the legend had stated. It was now only minutes to midnight. No vehicles had been seen for quite some time, and the isolation and darkness that swaddled them now congealed into anxiety of its purest form, injected directly into the pair. Each was trembling visibly, but neither noticed, because each was acutely focused on their own trepidation, overwhelming their senses to the point that their minds were about as tunneled as the one they walked within. A sudden noise then broke them from their silent attention of the exit before them, causing them both to stop and turn in unison. The sound was so faint and otherwise benign that the boys might have questioned whether or not there had been a noise at all, had the other not turned to investigate the exact same thing.
Dude, did you hear something?
Clancy was the first to speak, as Robbie was still struggling to formulate words through his fear.
I think so.
Robbie shakily answered. Each peered hard into the tunnel behind them, now standing at about halfway between openings. There was nothing to be seen in the passage behind them, or before them. The night was dark, but enough light persisted to reveal, to their now well-adjusted eyes, that the tunnel was entirely empty, aside from them.
Doesn't look like there's anything there,
Clancy said before pausing for a moment.
Hello?
He called out in a half-yell.
Dude, knock it off.
Oh, come on. There's nothing there. I was right. You are afraid,
Clancy said, somewhat laughing at his friend's fearful disposition, trying to hide his own.
Whatever. Can we just finish this, please? I'd like to get back before your parents find out we're gone.
Robbie insisted before turning back towards the direction that they had been heading, determined to finish what they had started so they could just get it over with. The breeze slightly shook the leaves beyond the tunnel infrequently and gently, and that was the only sound that each boy had heard, beyond their own footsteps and heavy breathing. The exit was soon within their reach, and soon after, they stepped beyond it, now back outside the tunnel on the other side of the railroad pass.
Dude, we freaking did it! I told you all that bullshit was fake. Come on, you ready to go back through and head home now?
Clancy asked with confidence. Robbie once again could say nothing, only staring back into the tunnel behind them.
What? Don't tell me you're too chicken to go back through. I'm not going around, man. Fuck that. You can...
Clancy began to state, but his words trailed off when he turned his head to see what Robbie had been staring at, unblinkingly and slack-jawed. Clancy couldn't believe what he saw, and refused to believe his eyes at first. Within the tunnel, about halfway in, stood a silhouetted figure, black like a shadow under a cloak of darkness, much taller than either of them, and made taller still by a pair of long, protruding ears that seemed to jut out nearly vertically from the top of the form's bulbous head. Both arms hung lazily at its side, but the shadow of one drew out longer, and it was tipped with the blackened outline of a fireman's axe.
What the fuck?
Clancy finally managed to sputter out.
I told you he was...
Robbie stopped talking when the figure suddenly jumped to life and started moving in their direction. Both were so unwilling to believe their eyes that they at first ignored their screaming instincts to run, wanting to see who this shadow really was so that they could prove to themselves that the legend was still false. But as they watched on, the figure moved faster and faster, and once it had broken into a slight jog, they both turned to run, sprinting down the pavement of the empty road, away from their homes and towards nothing of any life-saving significance. Each sprinted as fast as their legs would carry them, encouraging the other to keep up, but behind the sound of their own feet colliding with the pavement, another began to rise above them, out of sync with theirs and getting louder. The thing was chasing them, and gaining quickly. Robbie was too scared to turn and look back, but he watched as Clancy did just that, before turning with a shriek and visibly putting all of his effort into every step.
Run faster! Come on, this way!
Clancy yelled to his friend, running off the side of the road and into the woods. Robbie didn't think this was a very good idea, but following Clancy into the thick underbrush and blackened woodland sure beat facing that monster that chased him alone. Without slowing his momentum an iota, Robbie careened into the thick vegetation behind his friend, now swallowed by the enshadowed timberland. Robbie had caught up to Clancy after a short while, but soon Clancy insisted that they take a break. Robbie's lungs and muscles burned from oxygen deprivation and lactic acid, and although he didn't want to, he was forced to concede. The two leaned over, held upright by a single hand against a thick tree trunk, chests and shoulders heaving, desperately trying to both quench their thirst for breath and still their racing hearts, which were currently fueled by a torrent of terror.
I think we lost it.
Clancy heaved, out of breath.
You really think so?
Robbie asked, hoping for nothing more than reassurance, a hope that they might yet survive, something he desperately needed at the moment. The sound of leaves rustling immediately got their attention, and despite their bodies' demands for air, each instinctively held their breath, listening for what they knew would come next. Whatever it was, it had gotten closer, and turning in the direction it had come from, both struggled to look beyond the other one to peer around the left-hand side of the tree trunk.
Hey!
The boys screamed out in unison, shouting at the top of their lungs at the figure that had suddenly popped out around from the other side of the tree, behind them. A moment later, the pair realized the individual to be a short, blonde-haired girl in her early to mid-20s, and an attractive one at that. She wore a black denim jacket and blue jeans, and her expression was one of confusion and curious disappointment.
What the hell are you two doing out here?
The girl asked them firmly, as if they had done something wrong.
There was this thing chasing us with an axe and we tried to get away. I don't know if we did or not, though.
Clancy spoke for the both of them, scanning the forest all around them for any sign of movement or impending doom.
I think we need to get you out of here right now. Come on, follow me.
Just wait a second. Who are you? What are you doing out here?
Robbie questioned before resigning himself to following this strange woman.
You want to stand here and get my life story while you wait to be chopped into rabbit pellets? Or do you want to get out of here?
The woman questioned, insisting they do not waste any time. Unfortunately, it was too late.
There he is! Look out!
Robbie yelled, pointing past the woman over her shoulder. Mackenzie turned to see a looming figure only feet away, standing amongst the leaves and brittle twigs of the forest floor, having appeared only 12 feet from her without making a single sound, as if the thing had simply teleported to her location. It was tall, at about 8.5 feet at the tips of its ears. Its pinkish-white fur was heavily stained with mud and other dark substances, and the soiled plush material covered the thing from head to toe. The thing stood like a man on its hind legs, but it was clad in an almost menacing-looking rabbit outfit, complete with a black-eyed and bucktooth head mask. If there was a man beneath it, he was completely hidden beneath the dirty outfit, and clutched in his left paw dangled a dull and rusted fire axe.
Run!
Mackenzie yelled out to the boys, who instantly ran in the direction from which they had originally come, doubling back to the underpass and hopefully the safety of their homes beyond it. The monster turned from Mackenzie and began to walk in the direction of the now absconding youths, but Mackenzie didn't allow it. Mackenzie pulled a bulky and rigid object from inside her jacket, opposite from where she kept her iron knife, and lifted it eye level between her and the bunny man, aiming her sawed-off shotgun at the monster and pulling the trigger. The resulting effect caused the monster to once again turn and face her, which was her original intent, but the salt from the round simply collided with its dirty fur, visibly hitting its mark with a salt spray. But the monster kept coming. Mackenzie knew that apparitions were averse to salt, always causing them to instantly vanish before reconstituting themselves. This creature did no such thing. The salt pellets had absolutely no effect on the creature, and as Mackenzie now turned to run, she knew that she was wrong. This thing was not a ghost. Mackenzie sprinted through the forest, perpendicular to the semi-distant road, turning occasionally to see the bunny man chasing swiftly behind her, keeping pace. She reached into her pocket as she ran, pulling out her cell phone. She hadn't heard from Seth all day, and upon noticing the lack of signal bars at the top of the screen, she understood why.
Shit.
Mackenzie then turned towards the direction of the road, hoping to either get signal or find the help she needed to then make a quick getaway. But when she altered trajectory, Mackenzie realized that she could no longer see her pursuer. Mackenzie knew it was still there, ready to appear at any moment, as it had done before.
Come on out, you son of a bitch!
She yelled out into the pitch of the forest, senses pricked for any detectable response. Meanwhile, Clancy and Robbie had once again made it back to the underpass, lungs and muscles burning. They knew that whoever that woman was, she had saved their lives, and neither wanted to waste the opportunity given to them.
Hey!
Both youths once again screamed out in unison when an unknown man had abruptly made his presence known, standing at the brink of the tree line at the road's edge, near the underpass. The man came running towards them, and instinctively, both boys turned to flee.
Hey, wait a second! Have you kids seen my sister?
The man yelled out to them, and upon realizing this person as a living human being, the two of them stopped and allowed him to catch up.
Yeah, she's back there in the woods near where that old bus is.
Clancy explained.
Wait, sister? Boy, you guys really know how to make an entrance.
Yeah, she's my sister. Listen, I don't have time. Is she okay?
Honestly, I don't know. We were attacked and...
Robbie started, but before he could finish, the man darted into the forest, sprinting in the direction that they had pointed.
I know you're out here. I bet you're afraid of me, huh? Yeah, I'd be afraid of me too.
Mackenzie talked to the darkness around her, knowing this thing could hear her, gripping the handle of her knife inside her pocket tightly. Slowly and cautiously, she walked in the direction of the road, soon coming across the remnants of an old, forgotten bus, just like the one that Jake had told her and Seth about. Mackenzie shifted her focus, inspecting the rusted frame and what was left of its shell, which wasn't much. Mackenzie heard the sound of leaves rustling right behind her, and she turned to face what she knew was there, but it was too late. The large, monstrous rabbit man was upon her, tackling her to the ground like a linebacker. Mackenzie punched at the thing's plush, costumed head, jabbing her other fist into its ribs as the monster wrapped a furry paw around her neck. Mackenzie then reached her hand inside her jacket once more, pulling out the iron dagger and plunging it deep into the fur-covered chest above her. Again, to her surprise, this did nothing. Blood leaked from the wound that she had created, but the monster put up a fight as if nothing had happened to affect it at all. Mackenzie pushed hard into the thing's chest as the monster sat closer to upright and raised the fire axe in the hand not currently choking Mackenzie to near unconsciousness. The thing choked its grip on the handle and readied itself to bring the axe down on the head of its victim.
Hey, Peter Cottontail!
The monster hesitated and turned in the direction of where Seth was now standing. Mackenzie also turned to look back, just in time to see a bright, burning fireball launched into the air and strike her attacker right in the forehead, the arrow sticking in place. Instantly, the face and ears of the bunny man were ablaze, causing the monster to shriek out in pain unlike any living human ever could. And just as quickly, the creature vanished into thin air, leaving behind only a few remaining dancing embers in its place.
Boy, am I glad to see you.
I should hope so. That thought almost turned you into a Cadbury corpse. Come on, we don't have much time. The thing will be back any moment.
And what exactly is that thing anyway? Iron does nothing, salt does nothing.
Fire, you ass. The damn thing's a revenant. It has an aversion to fire.
Oh, Revenant. I knew that. That was my next guess.
Oh, really?
Okay, maybe not my next guess, but I did get this.
Mackenzie said, holding up that which she held in her hands. A second later, just as suddenly as the thing had vanished, a thick, white smoke began to form in the air, lingering like an isolated fog, before finally solidifying into the looming figure of a man in a dirty rabbit costume. Mackenzie simply smiled, holding up the heart that she now held in her hand.
Hey, Seth. What's the only way to kill a revenant?
Mackenzie asked, as the creature looked down to inspect the gaping hole in its chest where the girl had dug her fist in.
Why, you need to stake it through the heart, to the soil where it originally died.
And where did Bugs bite the big one?
Well, according to legend, right here, where this bus is.
The bunny man charged at the siblings, but it was too late. Mackenzie dropped the heart to the forest floor before instantly plunging her dagger through it, sticking the tip into the topsoil beneath. The monster screamed as it turned into an 8-foot-tall fireball before reducing to ashes and embers by the time it had reached a standing Seth and kneeling Mackenzie, holding the handle of her blade.
I told you should have looked into things first. If I hadn't run into those two kids, I might not have saved you in time.
Seth gloated as Mackenzie stood to her feet.
Actually, Dweeb, if I had listened to you, those two kids you so happen to run into would be dead right now.
Mackenzie argued.
Yeah, and you almost died instead. How is that any better?
You know what, Seth? I may not spend a lot of time planning out my every move, but I don't hesitate. And when there's life on the line, that's what it takes.
Don't tell me what it takes, Kins. You're basically telling me it's our job to sacrifice ourselves for the greater good.
Yeah, I am.
Well, I'm not ready to just sit back and watch my sister die. Okay?
Then don't sit, Seth. Fight.
Yeah, that seems to be what you do best.
And sitting back and doing nothing seems to be what you're best at, Seth.
The siblings' argument was abruptly interrupted by the sound of Seth's cell phone ringing.
Oh, sure. Now we get a signal.
Mackenzie sighed. Seth slid the bar to answer the call before placing it to his ear.
Yeah, Huck. What's up?
You dunderwhelps need to drop what you're doing and get back here. Something's up. And what I've translated from the pieces of this book you've been collecting, it ain't good.
What do you mean?
I haven't been able to translate much, but from what I have, something big's a-coming. And I'm not sure, but I'm thinking you two are smack dab in the middle of it for some reason. And there's something else as well.
Well, spill it, Huck.
Jesse's been keeping up to date on all that's been going on, trying to help put the dots together.
And
You remember that series crew at the Gilmont Estate? The Confronting Evil people?
How could we forget?
Well, they're dead.
What do you mean, dead?
Yeah, they were all murdered. I guess not long after you two left. All except that Jimmy guy, that is. He's missing. And Cash, who barely got away with his life. Boy, does he have a story to tell.
Mackenzie then turned her attention toward Seth, glaring daggers at him, obviously implying that they should have stuck around a bit, just to be sure.
So, what are you thinking? You think maybe Jimmy had a little close encounter of the creepy kind of his own?
Mackenzie asked into the phone, still not taking her eyes off her brother. Seth remained silent.
Listen, just get back here as soon as you can. We need to go over everything and make a plan.
Yeah, Seth will like that.
Seth gave a look in response to his sister's comment that told her that was a low blow. Mackenzie didn't care.
What was that?
Nothing. We're on our way. We'll be there by tomorrow night.
Mackenzie and Seth said nothing to each other all the way back to the Torino. Seth knew that she blamed him for the deaths of those who perished, but he didn't feel that was fair. Whoever's or whatever's fault this was, it was out there, out to get the both of them, and the blame surely wasn't his. But he knew his sister. She was stubborn and brash, and he felt she wouldn't listen to reason. Mackenzie, on the other hand, wasn't thinking about Seth. She was past that. At least, she thought she was. She was simply focused on the next mission, to find out what happened to the Confronting Evil crew. What the hell was manipulating their lives, and what was responsible for their father's death? Mackenzie buried all that she felt deep inside her, knowing such thoughts could cloud her focus and get them killed. She resented Seth for not caring as much as she did, for not wanting answers as badly as she did, and for not being as dedicated to the cause as she was. At least, that's where her thoughts currently landed. Before long, Mackenzie and Seth had reached where he had parked the Ford, climbing into the driver's and passenger seats, respectively.
Hey, Kens.
What?
Mackenzie replied flatly, without even looking at Seth.
You know what? Never mind,
Seth said, reclining his seat backwards in an attempt to go to sleep.
Yeah, never mind.
Mackenzie mumbled, starting the car and pulling from place. The drive back to Huck's would be a long and silent one, and whether either of them realized it, they had changed things again for the better. Another evil had been stopped, and another town could sleep in peace. But something else loomed over the both of them, traveling alongside them as they careened down a black and vacant highway, whether it was with them or not. Something was waiting in the shadows, waiting for the right moment, and soon the time would be upon them. Somewhere in the world, a clawed, ebon, gaunt finger protruded from the sleeve of a dark robe, pushing a leaf of old parchment aside, scanning the one that had been underneath, the final part of its plan. An evil grin graced the creature's face, mostly obscured by the robe that hung loose over its countenance. They were exactly what it needed, and everything had gone as planned. The monster then glared down at the paper once more, smirking, displaying its pointed, yellow, fang-like teeth just below its sockets, one dark and cloaked in shadow, and the other housing a gleaming red eye. Well, it would seem that the siblings have triumphed once again, except amongst themselves. Will their feud last? And will they be able to focus as their past comes back with a more holistic truth? Well, only 2 more episodes of Season 1 remain, and Seth and Mackenzie will be back next month when Confronting Evil returns. Social media can be very unpredictable, especially regarding horror content. If this content gets removed, all new content will be simultaneously presented on various websites provided in the description to this video. Make sure to follow me in other digital spaces so that you never miss out on the terror. Also, if you like this video, make sure to leave a comment and hit the like button. It helps the channel a lot. If you're new to the channel and you enjoy what's here, consider hitting that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you never miss an upload. Writing is a dream of mine, and it's all of you that make that dream come true.